Good evening, everyone. I'm giving people a chance to share around. I'm giving myself a chance to share around. Hi, Jason. Who else? Hello, Ginger. Hello, Robin. Hello, Chai. I see your name all over the place. Look forward to meeting you. Hi, Mark. And okay, so let's give it just a few more minutes so we can share around. And I'd appreciate you sharing this around to groups where people need to learn. And also, I have two priorities. One is to teach people, of course, but this one's going to be a little bit messy because of all the feedback that I've gotten this week from my Graham Elwood lesson. So I scrambled to integrate as much as I could. So I need you guys who know this stuff and have seen lots of this to help me fix mistakes, fix errors, because my goal is to polish this. I'm going to be doing this every week for a while, and it's not there yet. It's getting there. So for those who know MMT well, modern money well, I'm looking forward to your advice in particular on how to make this really solid, an economic MMT economist worthy, presentation. So, all right. So thank you for sharing this around, and we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Thank you for the luck, Ian. Okay, it is 8 o'clock. Thank you guys for sharing this around to groups that contain progressives that need to learn this. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Okay. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Jeff Epstein. I'm with Citizens Media TV, and I'm new with Real Progressives. And my goal tonight is two goals tonight. Number one is to teach people modern money. That's my number one goal, is to teach people modern money. And no matter how many times I do this, there are millions and millions of people that need to learn it. So I'm choosing to be repetitive. But my other goal is, I've only known modern money since February. I've never even heard of it before, pretty much. I never heard of it at all. And Jeff Ginter taught me it, and we just did a deep dive, and now I'm trying to teach it to people. And I want to make this presentation into something that is worthy of being considered a true MMT economist level kind of presentation. It's not there yet. It's on its way. I've only done it once. Aside from rehearsals, I've only done this once. So I want to teach people, and I think what it is already is enough to teach most. However, there are significant, subtle things that need to be polished and improved and corrected. So those of you who know this I am looking to you to please give me advice on subtle corrections, significant things that need to be corrected so that this becomes more and more accurate. I want this to be, I'm hoping to be able to present this at the MMT conference in New York. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm going to work as if it's going to happen. But even if it doesn't, I'm going to be able to use this in, many different ways. So I'm looking to you to help me make corrections because I don't know this well enough. I am drinking from a fire hose. So, okay. So I'm going to do this a little differently. I gave this to Graham Elwood 2 Wednesdays ago, and it went amazing. I mean, it couldn't have gone better. And since then, I've gotten, can't handle all this feedback. It's too much. I love it, but just can't process it. So I want to do this in 2 kinds of ways. One is to be one-on-one with someone, and then the other is to just give it as an hour-long lecture. I want to get it to be exactly an hour long. I'm not there yet. I have no clue how long this is going to be. But my goal is going to be an hour lecture. And if I'm sitting down with someone one-on-one, I want them to be able to interrupt and ask questions and so on. So I'm expecting that that's going to be about an hour and a half. It was an hour and 40 minutes with Graham. So I'm going to give this tonight more like a lecture, and I'm not going to stop for questions. But at the end, I'll answer as many questions as you like, and we can talk for as long as you want. But tonight I'm going to do this more as a lecture. Try and get this down. Actually, that's what I'm going to be doing each time, is doing this as a lecture. Separately, I'll be talking with people and sitting down with them and doing interviews and not interviews, but giving them this lesson on a one-on-one, give and take, asking questions and so on. But in this Saturday night thing that I'm planning on doing, I'm just going to give a lecture and just plug it through. Afterwards, we can talk as long as we want. So let me just do that. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then the idea of that this is going to fit in, this larger idea that this presentation is going to fit into, and then we'll get to the nitty-gritty. So, okay. So my name is Jeff Epstein, and before Bernie Sanders, politically speaking, I just slept my entire life away. I slept, I voted Democrat, I woke up, voted Democrat, went back to sleep. I voted Democrat because I was told that the Democrats were the good guys and I was told that the Republicans were the bad guys. I had no idea, I didn't pay attention, but I did what I was told. And then in August of 2017, I discovered Bernie Sanders. And in February 2016, I left a job, a reasonably high-paying job, and I volunteered for his campaign full-time. Months later, the campaign asked me, out of the blue, I mean, I got to know people, I don't know how it happened, but the Sanders campaign asked me to run with him on the ballot in my county in New Jersey. And I did, and I lost, but I got 12,000 votes. It was an exciting experience. And then finally, I was a delegate for him at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention in Philly. I live pretty close to Philly. I live 30 minutes from Philly. And that was the first time that Citizens Media TV came to be. We had done stuff before this, but this was the big thing that we were working up towards. Adrienne Ashley could not have done it without her. So being a Bernie Sanders delegate at the convention was not a pleasant experience. We weren't there to do anything aside from, be shamed pretty much. So I decided to make something of it. And what I decided to do was to live stream what it was like to be a Bernie Sanders delegate. And I live streamed an average of 8 hours a day. And it was an incredible experience. It was not fun, but it was meaningful hard work. And we reached a lot of people. Me and a small amount of delegates and a small amount of protester supporters on the outside across the street. We all live streamed on Citizens Media TV. Adrienne Ashley helped get it out there, and we reached well over 1 million people that week. And so that was pretty great. So after that, after the DNC, I was a finalist, one of 60 finalists for Brand New Congress out of 1,500 people around the nation, around the country that was nominated. And finally, I dem-entered. I just dem-entered. I did a write-in campaign the day before the election, just a few weeks ago, and I am now a Democratic County Committeeman. So we'll see what it's going to be like, because they know what I'm about, they know what I believe in, so we'll see. So, okay, so that's me, and now this lecture is actually going to be part of a larger project that I'm working on with Jeff Ginter, and we are being advised by Ellis Winningham to make sure that everything we say about economics is accurate. And we're calling it the Real Progressives Modern Money Education Initiative. And what that is to teach, the goal of which is to teach the masses modern money. I want to start with progressives, and then I want to go to disadvantaged communities. So that's what Graham Elwood. So in order to teach the masses, I need to, I need to change the level of this. This is too high. Excuse me for one moment here. Sorry. Okay, excuse me. All right, so the Real Progressives Modern Money Education Initiative, this is all in the description. I want to teach the masses. I want to teach the disadvantaged masses, starting with progressives and then going on with economic and racial and cultural disadvantaged communities. But I want to start by talking with their leaders, teaching modern money to their leaders, which is why I spoke with Graham Elwood a couple weeks ago. He has tens of thousands of people in his audience. He reaches a lot of people. And I want to do that because, number one, I get a foot in the door with their community, with their audiences. And number two, you can learn from the leader of what is more respectful way of communicating with that community. So that's a larger and then you teach the masses themselves. So that's the larger context that this presentation is meant to be part of. But that gives it context, but the presentation itself, I just want to make it as solid as possible regardless. So, okay, so that's enough about background, and I want to see comments, but okay. So again, this is my first one after getting tons of feedback, and I'm still getting it. So this is going to be a little bit messy perhaps, but I have implemented what I could. I've gotten feedback, an overwhelming amount of great feedback. I've tried to implement what I could, but I just have not had time. I've been scrambling to do what I can, but I'm going to be doing it every week, and it's going to get better and better and better, especially after I'm done. After I get through it, the presentation proper, I'm going to look through your feedback, and then we can talk. Okay. So there are two stages of learning modern money. The first stage is to discard everything wrong that you know, and then to open your mind to modern money. Okay? Then stage two is once your mind is open to it. Hi, Aaron. Then stage two, once your mind is open to it, then you can take all the time in the world to learn the more advanced concepts. That is just, it's all downhill. Once your mind is open to modern money, it's all downhill. Okay? I can only teach stage one. I'd never heard of modern money before February when Jeff Ginter taught me it. So I have a lot to learn, and I can't debate, I can't handle tons of skepticism. Mute this conversation. I can't handle lots of skepticism, so I can teach stage one, and I need, while we are talking, assuming that I'm talking with someone, that you need to have an open mind. I am asking you to have an open mind. When we're done, you should be as absolutely skeptical as you feel you need to be. You should do your homework and you should decide the truth for yourself. You should not just believe me. But during our talk, during this lesson, I'm asking you to have an open mind. So after we finish this, there are a ton of people that are ready and waiting to teach you the more advanced stuff. Real progressives, filled with people that know way more than I do. And there's other groups as well. And there are economists, MMT economists, that a lot of these people have the ability of getting in contact with. And many of them are very likely willing to assist with learning these more advanced concepts. So, okay, so that's all the pre stuff. And now, let's begin. And again, I had to scramble to do a lot of this stuff all over again. So, okay, now the lesson begins. Actually, what time is it? Starting at 18:20. Okay, so let's start with two scenarios. And the first scenario is that you are a father or a father with twins. And it's about to be their birthday. So you ask your children, what do you want for your birthday? And the first one tells you that they want a big screen television, a big screen TV. The other one tells you that they want a video game system. And neither of these things are a surprise to you because they've been talking about it forever. They are passionate about it. They have wanted it for a long time, and you know that it's going to make them happy. So you go to the store and you look around and you do some comparisons and you realize that unfortunately you can only afford just one. So you tell your children, you say, I'm sorry, but because of our family budget, because of the money that we have available to us, I can only afford to buy one of you a gift, a present this year for your birthday. Now, you have to share it. You have to share it with your brother. I'm not trying to be unreasonable or mean, but I simply just can't. I don't have the money to do it. So, how do we determine who's going to get a gift? So he goes to his children and he says, you need to convince me why you should get your gift. You need to do analysis. You need to do research. You need to tell me the pros and cons. You need to describe to me why you're so passionate. Why, given our money, the money available to us, and our family budget, why you should get your birthday present. So even though you don't say it, obviously this also means that they have to tell you why they should get it and the brother should not get it. So even though you don't say it, it becomes competitive. So, and you're not messing around. You tell them, you got to hand me a paper, a formally written, well-documented paper. And so your children, your twins, work incredibly hard. They do research, they consult with experts, they read through tons of sources, and after a month, a lot of work, they hand in their papers of their analysis of why they should get their present. And you read through the papers and you decide that the one about the big screen TV is better, and you decide to go with that. The other one, it was good, and you did a good job, but just for whatever reason, I'm deciding that the big screen TV, this research paper, is just a little more convincing. So, you buy the big screen TV. You give it to one of your twins. And they have to share it. You're not trying to be unreasonable. You're not trying to be mean. But it's upsetting, because you can only afford just one present for your children. You can't afford the other one. They've been waiting for it for a long time. They're passionate, and it's upsetting. Okay? So abrupt ending to scenario 1, now scenario 2. Scenario 2 is exactly the same thing, but this time you are a multi-millionaire. And you still ask them what they want for their birthday. You still go to the store, and you still do comparisons, and you still decide that you can only afford just one. And you still go to your kids and tell them that they have to do research. I am really sorry, I can only afford just one, and you have to convince me. And you make your children do research to convince you that given your money and your budget, of why you should get it for them and not the other. You still make them spend all of that time, all of that energy, and they, after a month of that work, they still hand it into you, and you decide the big screen TV one is better. You did a good job too, but it's just this one's more convincing, and you buy the television, and they have to share it, and again, you're not trying to be mean. Whoops. But, oh no, where is it? Oh well, let's see if I can do even more. Okay, but why would you even bring up the concept of money? Because you can clearly afford a present for both of your children. You can clearly afford anything and everything that you want. Why would you even bring up the concept of money? Why would you even bring up the concept of affordability? Why would you make your children spin their wheels on something that clearly does not matter? And even more than that, why would you pit your children together against each other for something that clearly does not matter? You know what, give me a moment. I'd lost a page here. Decision. Yeah, all right, oh well. I lost a page. Why would you pit your children together against each other when you have money to afford anything and everything that you want? You decided not to give a present to your one twin. You decided to give a present to your other child. But that decision, those decisions are not related. Those decisions have nothing to do with each other. But you are acting as if they are dependent. So, okay. Lost a page there, but I'm still recovering. All right, so now let's bring this up to the United States. It is a travesty that the United States chooses endless war, excessive military, and tax breaks for the millionaires. It is a travesty. It is also a travesty that the United States chooses not to give Medicare for all, free college, a living wage, and chooses not to fix our poisoned water. It is immoral and it is unjust. But the bigger travesty is that the American people have been tricked into thinking that we can only afford one or the other. We have been tricked into thinking that we have to choose. So we spend most of our time analyzing and justifying and researching why and how we should be able to afford these things. When the United States, I love the feedback, but it's making me go crazy. Justifying and researching why and how we should be able to afford these things when the United States can easily afford all of it at the same time. And it could have given us all of these things decades ago. They can keep their endless war. They can keep their tax breaks. They can let them have their toys. It is temporary. It must be temporary because we can't keep going on like this. This is not a good thing. However, The United States can indeed afford it all at the same time. And they are choosing to give the powerful what they want. They are choosing to not give the powerless what they want. And they are pretending that these decisions are connected when they are completely independent. Okay, so my goal, and that's a teaser, that's the introduction, that's, just throwing stuff out there as a teaser. And I'm hoping that now we're going to get into the detail, or soon we're going to get into the detail, and I'm hoping that you will understand truly why I'm saying all of these things. So, okay, so that's the end of that. And now, part 2, and I promise this is all going to come together. Excuse me. All right, part 2. The Pony for All Act of 2018. So for a few minutes, I want to take a completely ridiculous situation, seriously. So, of course, Hillary Clinton in her book said, "Oh, it's really nice that you want to give everybody a pony, Bernie. Everybody would love a pony, but how you gonna pay for it?" Okay? So I want to take that seriously just for a few minutes. It is utter insanity to actually give every American a pony, but I want to take it seriously and pretend that we're actually going to try and do it. And I want to be clear that it is genuinely possible, that if we chose to do this ridiculous thing, it is genuinely possible that we could do it. We could give every man, woman, and child in the United States an actual biological pony. So here we go. So hypothetical. I have great news. Our government is suddenly no longer corrupt, and money is no object. Okay? So President Trump, and President Trump has committed that he is going to sign the Pony for All Act of 2018. So great news, great surprise. And this law requires that every man, woman, and child in the United States gets access to a free pony. And my question to you is how do we make this happen? What would it take to actually make it possible for every single man, woman, and child in the United States to get a pony? So logistically, specifically, what would it take to give every man, woman, and child, all 320 million Americans, their own free pony? Okay, what would that take? And I want to work through that right now. So first of all, how many ponies are in the United States? A very rough guess is about 500,000, 500,000. So 500,000 ponies, 320 million Americans. We have a long way to go. How do we make those 500,000 ponies reproduce into 320 million ponies? How do we do that? So first of all, mommies and daddies must do their thing over and over and over again. We have to know what the gestation period for a pony is, and then we have to make them do their thing over and over again and calculate how long that's going to take. So that 500,000 will reach 320 million. So a very rough guess that I'm going to give is I'll say 10 years. So 10 years. 10 years, 500,000 ponies can reproduce and duplicate into 320 million ponies. So 10 years. So let's say we start that process. Hypothetically, the law hasn't been signed yet. Let's say we start that process. So we get ponies to do their things, mommy and daddy ponies to do their things over and over again, and now we're starting to get a lot of ponies. So now we need more land, we need more food, we need more fences, we need more shelter, we need trees so they can have some shade, we need more horseshoes, we need to give them exercise. That takes people. We need to give them health care. they get sick. So this requires labor to get the land, the food, the fences, the shelter, the trees for the shade, to build it, to repair it, to maintain it, to educate new blacksmiths, to educate new breeders and new health caretakers and new veterinarians. We need time to educate them because 320 million ponies is going to require a lot more labor. Not just to be with the ponies and take care of them, but to build all of the things and to create all of the food and grow all the food. So that's sort of the basics of how, the birthing of them, the reproduction of them. But then we have to consider there's 350 million people spread all over the United States, and that means we have to spread these ponies throughout the entire United States. I mean, these 500,000 ponies, where are they? Are they very evenly distributed? We need to start creating places all around the country with land and food and fences and shelter and trees and so on, and labor, blacksmiths and breeders and veterinarians and so on, all around the country, all around. The distribution is a big deal. There are going to be, hold on a moment. So the distribution of the animals, the distribution of the supplies, the food and so on. And now we have all the ponies, and now the citizens need to get them. But we don't just want them to just pick them up with no education. We need to train the citizens. How do you deal with a pony? How do you prepare your house for a pony? Now we need fences and housing and fences and shelters and food for the houses. We need stores so that they can pick up supplies. We need veterinarians so that they can consult. The citizens can consult and get help and get advice and get training and so on. So these ancillary industries, all of these industries are going to pop up because we want everybody to have a pony. All of these industries, still a little bit more. So 320 million ponies. Now a serious issue is going to be, how do we dispose of dead ponies? 320 million ponies, that's a serious issue. Something logistic needs to happen. Something needs to be organized to anticipate that. So all of these ancillary businesses, all of these secondary supportive industries are going to be created because of this endeavor of wanting to give everybody a pony. So this is the entire life cycle, from birth to death, of how we start from what we have now into implementing this law so that everybody gets their own animal in the whole country, and that they're supported in the right way, and that we anticipate it happening in the right way without causing problems. And this is the real resources necessary to make this law happen. So the money doesn't matter, however much that costs, however much we think is fair. So I'll say $10 billion. I have no idea. Let's say $10 billion. We decide is fair, given all of these things that we have thought through, to get everybody in the country an animal. So $10 million, and we've decided that it's 10 years. So these are the real resources, forgetting the money. These are the real resources, all of these things that we said, blacksmiths, horseshoes, feed, land, and so on. These are the real resources necessary to make this law, this ridiculous scenario, actually possible. Because it is actually possible. So real resources, things in the ground, things that grow, animals, human labor, and the most unexpected but still critical is time. Time. We couldn't do this in a week. We couldn't reproduce, let alone just the point of view of reproducing 500,000 into 320 million. We couldn't do that in a week. We couldn't do that in a year. And let alone all of the secondary things that are going to be needed, construction of the fences and educating veterinarians and all that. It is impossible to do it in a week. It is impossible to do it in a month. It is impossible to do it in a year. It is possible to do it in 10 years because our real resources can handle it. our productive capacity can handle that. Okay, so that's the end of the pony thing, and I don't want to ignore your feedback, but it's just too much to process, and I can't really answer the questions right now. Okay, as long as there's no nuclear holocaust going on, I can continue. All right, so next section, completely unrelated. The dollar bill. You have a dollar bill, a paper dollar bill in your pocket. Take it out and tell me, where did it come from? Where did that dollar bill come from? So you likely got it from your paycheck. Forgetting direct deposit. You likely got it from your paycheck. You got it from your company. Company, you did work for them. They gave you $1. But where did they get that dollar? Where did they get that dollar? Where did that dollar come from? So you got it from them. Where did they get it? They got it from a customer that purchased their product. Where did that customer get that dollar from? They got it from their company paycheck. And on and on and on and on and on. And actually, this is something that I need help with. I don't really can't get it in my head of a realistic pathway all the way back. Keep going on and on. Somehow it has to do with the law and whatever. So keep going on and on and on. Where did that dollar come from? And the ultimate answer is, it came from the Federal Reserve. The ultimate answer is that it came from the Federal Reserve. But that's not all. Where did the Federal Reserve get? Who instructed the Federal Reserve to create that dollar? And that's the Treasury. Who is the Treasury triggered by, instructed by? The Treasury is instructed by a law that was signed by the President and written by the Congress, the legislative branch. So it's the Congress. The answer is the Congress. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution says that the Congress is the monopoly issuer of the currency. They are the only ones in the world who are allowed to create the United States dollar. They are the monopoly currency issuer. Everyone else in the country, everyone is a monopoly, everyone else in the country, everyone else in the world that uses a dollar, a United States dollar, is a currency user. You, me, households, our companies, our municipalities, our states, other countries, China and Russia. We are all currency users. We are all on the same playing field and the same level. The only one that gets to create the currency is the Congress. We could, as a currency user, try to create the currency, but we will go to federal prison for a long time. Counterfeiting. So the creation of the dollar is no different than a child drawing a dollar bill. Is no different than a child drawing a dollar bill on a piece of construction paper. It is no different than a child drawing a $1 trillion bill on a piece of construction paper. It's no different. It is a game. It is a social construct. It is a choice. So the United States Congress can create the dollar out of thin air. They can create as much as they want. They can create it whenever they want. They can create it for whatever purpose they want. And they are the only ones that can do it. They're the monopoly currency issuer of the United States dollar. So since they are the only ones in the world that can create it, they can create as much as they want, whenever they want, for whatever they want. If they're the only ones that can do it, and they can do it as much as they want, do they need any income? Do they need any income? If you can create your own currency, and you're the only one that can do it, and everybody else has to accept your currency, do you need any income? And of course, the answer is no, you don't. The United States Congress, the federal government, can create as much as it wants, whenever it wants, for whatever purpose it wants, and it's the only one that can do it. It makes no sense that the federal government needs to get the United States dollar from anybody else, whether it's people, states, companies, municipalities, or other countries. It makes no sense because it can do it whenever it wants. So, if the United States government can create its own money, then why does it borrow? And why does it collect? Why does it collect taxes? So borrowing from anybody doesn't make sense. So China is a user of the United States currency just like everybody else. And the United States government borrowing the United States dollar from China is sort of like saying the Philadelphia Phillies, there is a particularly high-scoring game. And I do remember a game that I listened to years ago that was like 21-2. And actually, I went to the highest-scoring World Series game in history, which was like 26-something. So the Philadelphia Phillies call up the Pittsburgh Pirates and they say, listen, we have a particularly high-scoring game and we ran out of points. Can we please borrow some so we can put them on the scoreboard? And that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. There is no bucket of points in the back office of the Philadelphia Phillies. They are a social construct. They are a game. They're a choice. You can write it on the piece of paper and then erase it. It is similar. It is similarly just as silly to say that the United States government needs to borrow the United States dollar from China or from me or you. Okay, so since the federal government can create its own money, then why does it collect taxes? So here I want to stop for a moment and I want to ask you that if you remember only one thing from this entire lesson, I want you to remember this. And this is created by bleh. This was, oh gosh, okay, let me start over. If you remember one thing only from this lesson, I'm asking you to remember this phrase. And this phrase is the following. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Federal spending funds federal taxes. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Federal spending funds federal taxes. And that comes from Ellis Winningham, who is the Director of Economic Policy at Real Progressives. He gave me an amazing amount of feedback. So, I want you to remember that phrase, please, if you remember nothing else. So federal taxes are very important, but not because we need the money, not because the federal government needs the money. So why do they collect taxes? Why do we collect federal taxes? So there's three reasons. There's three reasons. The first and most important reason, the only reason that the US dollar is used and people consider it valuable, is that the United States, we collect taxes, we collect federal taxes because it drives the currency and drives the economy. And for those who don't know modern money, that is absolutely meaningless when you first hear it, because we've never been taught that. What could that possibly mean? But I'm going to describe it to you. So I'm going to do an analogy. I'm going to describe it with an analogy. And my analogy is that I have two little boys. They're about to be 12 and 9 years old. And for their whole lives, they had been really good with doing chores. They've just done it. We just haven't had a problem. take out the trash, make your bed, set up the table for dinner when it's their night, and clean the room, and so on. They've been great, and it's been very helpful. But the past few months have been pretty rough. And so I sit down with my boys and I have a talk with them. And I tell them, you've been really good with chores your entire life. What in the world has been happening over the past few months? What is going on? Why are things becoming so difficult? Why are you dragging your feet like this? I asked you to do something, you need to do it. We need this to be done. And so I tell them that you need to help. You need to be part of this family. And so I say, Mommy and I have made a decision, and we have good news and we have bad news. And the bad news is that if you don't do your chores, you will be grounded for a week. So that's the bad news. But the good news is that we are going to give you allowance. We are now going to give you allowance. Because you are going to do your chores. That's non-negotiable. We are not going to be discussing that. We are not going to be negotiating that. You will be doing your chores. But Mommy and I are going to pay you allowance. And their eyes light up. And they ask, ooh, how much? And I just see the dollar signs in their eyes, dreaming of candy and so on. And I tell them, 10 business cards a week. And I pull out a whole bunch of boxes from my old job that are filled with old business cards. And they look at me like I'm nuts. Their expressions drop. And the older one says, I don't want your business cards. And the younger one says, show me the money, Lebowski. Had to. So I tell them, I say, you could use my business cards to buy things off of each other if you want. And you can, if you want to use my iPad, pay me a couple business cards. And they're listening, but they're totally skeptical. And I say, you could buy things off of me and Mommy. If we need to drive you somewhere or something, you can pay us a little bit. You could do extra chores for a few business cards here and there, every now and then. And then they ask me, well, what about the store? Can I buy candy at the store? And I said, no. And they say, what about the movies? Can I go to the movie? Can I buy, a movie ticket with this and popcorn? No, I'm sorry. And they say, what about the ice cream truck? And I say, unfortunately, my business cards cannot be used outside of our house. And then they look at me and they say, why are you doing this? This is stupid. I don't want to do this. And then I say, well, I have even more news. I haven't told you all of it yet. I haven't said everything yet. Because every 4 weeks, every week you get 10 in taxes. Every week you get 10 in allowance, 10 business cards for allowance. And every 4th week, you need to pay me 15 business cards in taxes. And again, they look at me like I'm nuts. What are you talking about, they say. What in the world are you thinking? Just use money. And I say, sorry, this is what we're going to do. And they say, fine, I'm not going to pay those taxes. And I say, okay, you will be grounded, then that's fine, but then you will be grounded for a month and you will get no allowance. And they say, well, I'm just going to take the business card to the copy store and I'm going to make 1,000 copies of your business cards and I don't have to worry about this anymore. And I say, okay, that's fine, but then you will be grounded for 6 months with no allowance. And now they care about my business cards. Now they care about the money that only I am allowed to create. They care about it because I make them care about it. And now they start to buy things off of each other with business cards. So the little one will sneak behind our backs and he'll say, please do my homework and I'll pay you 2 business cards. And the older one will say, I need you to make my bed for 3 days I'll give you 3 business cards if you do it for me. And the older one will say, I need a couple business cards. How about I'll let you use my iPad for 30 minutes. Can you pay me 2 business cards? And now the currency users, my children, care about my business cards. They care about my money. However, I don't care about the money. What do I care about? I care about that my house is being cleaned and they're helping me keep my house in order. I can't do it by myself. My wife and I can't do it by ourselves. We need their help. And this is our way to make them help us. And we are compensating them with some money that they can use to do things. If there's something, for example, important that needs to be done that's extra, like if we're having visitors over and we need to do some extra cleaning, here's 5 extra business cards, I need you to do this and this and this. So I can put some extra money into the economy to handle that. If for 1 week I can't drive for some reason, or a week my wife and I can't drive, and we might want to take some money out of the economy and tax them so that they will have less purchasing power to be able to get these things. So that's that analogy, and I've been scrambling on that. I'm sure that can be sharpened. But so now the United States. The people of the United States, all currency users, including China and Russia, so I should say all users of the dollar, all currency users, they care about the money. But the currency issuer, the monopoly currency issuer, doesn't care about the money. They care about the real resources available to them, and that the things that need to be done to run the country is done by these people. I can do some, but I need help. I have 320 million people, and I need help. So I make my children care about the business cards through taxing, and with large penalties if they don't pay their taxes, and even larger penalties if they try and counterfeit that money. And that's what it means to drive the currency and drive the economy. Let me just take a drink. That's the end of that subject. Okay, so that's purpose 1 of why the government collects federal taxes. And I'm a little uncomfortable not seeing all your comments, but I really don't have time to address them. So, okay, I'm hoping that it's going okay. So that's purpose number 1. It's drive the currency, drive the economy. There's 3 purposes, though. The second one is to control inflation. So we want to remove money from the economy to take away some of the purchasing power, some of the demand, if we don't have enough of the real resources in order to handle it. So the pony example, we determined that it would take 10 years, given our real resources, given our productive capacity, to give everyone in the country a pony. If we tried to do it in a week, if we tried to do it in a month or a year, it would not work, no matter how much money we threw at it. The money doesn't matter. What matters is the real resources. And if we tried to do it in a year, the real resources would not be able to to catch up with it. We would not have enough productive capacity to handle that. And prices would go crazy for ponies. Black markets would be created for ponies. But it is important to understand that that is not inflation. Prices going up in a single industry, and even in the industries directly related to that, prices may be affected if we foolishly try and implement this Pony for All Act in a year when it really should be 10 years. But that is not inflation. Inflation is when every single product in the entire country, every single currency user, every single product that you can purchase with the United States dollar, eggs, bread, movies, ice cream trucks, your monthly bills, gas, everything, when everything is affected. A macroeconomic inflation is when everything is affected. I didn't say that right. Inflation is macroeconomic. One industry, such as the pony industry, is not inflation because that doesn't affect everything. Inflation affects everything. Inflation is a macroeconomic event. So, a perfect example of inflation, controlling inflation with taxes, is war bonds. It's war bonds. So they're not exactly taxes, but this really explains it very well. So during World War II, we were temporarily off of the gold standard. So it's important to understand in August of 1971, we were taken off of the gold standard by Richard Nixon. And now we are no longer, our currency is no longer backed by anything physical. So we are a fiat currency. So we can create as much as we want, whenever we want, however, for whatever purpose we want. We're the only ones that can do it, and it is not backed by anything concrete. So we are not on the gold standard. It's not backed by gold. That stopped in August of 1971. We were also off of the gold standard during World War II, starting in the Depression, the end of the Depression, all the way through World War II. During that time, during World War II, all of the car companies diverted their real resources from cars to the war effort. Ships, tanks, artillery. Where are we? Yeah, ships, tanks, artillery, planes. So all of a sudden, and this is all, if not exactly true, is very close to true, that not a single car was created during World War II. But the money in people's pockets didn't change. And roughly speaking, the demand for new cars did not change during this time either. So we have a problem. People want new cars, just as they did last year, but now all of a sudden there are no new cars to sell them. So that is a danger. That's a danger. That's what could cause the prices of cars to go up and black markets and all that stuff. So there are two ways of dealing with inflation. One is two ways of dealing with, I don't know what to call it yet, this disparity between demand and supply. We need to reduce demand, or we need to increase supply, or some combination of the two. In this situation during World War II, there is no way to do that. We cannot increase the supplies of new cars because of the war. So what we did was we offered war bonds. And we said that to the American public, you can give us however much or little that you want. We will take your money. We will use it to support the troops, to support the war effort. And then in, say, 10 years, we will give you your money back with 5% interest. So they spend $1,000 for a war bond, and that money goes to the government, and then we give them a war bond, and that money is not used at all because, as we just determined, the federal government needs no income. So this money did not go to fund the troops. It did not go to fund the war effort. It just removed money from the economy so that instead of choosing to purchase a new car, people chose instead to purchase war bonds. And they chose to take their money out of the economy. And we gave them a piece of paper saying, here's a war bond for $1,000. You will get it back in 10 years with 5% interest. So taxes and bonds are very similar. A war bond is voluntary, it is temporary, and it gives you a bonus. Taxes are not voluntary, you will go to jail, or if you don't pay your taxes. They are not temporary, they are infinite, how long the money is held, and obviously there's no bonus. But taxes and war bonds both remove money from the economy, which reduces demand. So, I think that's it for that. Oh, and taxes are just one of a lot of different tools that could be used for inflation. So I don't want to imply that taxes are the only tool it is to control inflation. It is one of many tools. Okay, so that's reason number 2. Reason number 3, and I feel like I'm going pretty long, but it is what it is. Let's show you what page am I on. Oh, I'm 2/3 through, so I guess it's pretty good. Reason number 3 of why the federal government collects taxes, why federal taxes are collected. And that is to impose moral decisions. For example, we want to reduce alcohol use. We don't want to eliminate it, but we want to reduce it. We want to prevent addiction. We want to reduce the use of cigarettes. We want to reduce the use of gambling and other vices. We want to reduce, not just reduce, we want to stop activities that cause pollution. We want to reduce income inequality. So one way we can do that is to increase taxes on alcohol, increase taxes on cigarettes and gambling and activities that cause pollution, and taxes on the rich. I'm going to set the income inequality aside for a moment. So alcohol and cigarettes and gambling, we might want to increase the taxes on those products some, but not crazy, because it's okay if you do it. We just don't want you to do it too much. We might want to increase taxes on activities that cause pollution a lot, because we really need that to stop, because we're all going to die because of climate change. We'll talk about income inequality in a minute. On the other side, lowering taxes to encourage behavior. For example, we want to encourage people to buy solar panels. We want to encourage people to get electric cars. We want to encourage people to have gym memberships. So we might lower taxes, or I guess refunds, but lower taxes on gym memberships, lower taxes on solar panels, lower taxes on electric cars. And again, how much do we want to encourage these activities? And that determines how much we lower those taxes by. So now we want to discourage income inequality. Okay? So we decide as a society that being rich is fine. There is nothing wrong with being rich. And we'll say, there's nothing wrong with being 300 times more wealthy than the average American. Whatever we as a society decide is moral and right and just. But at some point, these people become so wealthy that they're not just becoming rich. I don't know how to say that. They become so wealthy that it becomes impossible to become even more wealthy unless you extract from the well-being of others. You profit off of the suffering of others. And it is at that point that we want to stop income inequality. And in fact, we have now such an immoral level of income inequality that not only are they extracting from the well-being of others, but they are actually using their pocket change. They have just spare pocket change to buy our politicians. And that means that they get to make the laws, which means that they can create the cycle of making income inequality even worse. So we may as a society decide that you are welcome to have up to $500 million. That's fine. But after that, that is our threshold of everything above $500 million We as a society decide that this is obscene. This is immoral. This is unjust. And we as a society decide that whatever income that you have above $500 million is going to be taxed 90%. And they can come back and they can whine, oh, 90%, that's so unfair, you're just penalizing success. But we as a society decide that no, that is too much success. That is unreasonable success. And we are not taxing 90% of all of your income. We are only taxing 90% of the obscene portion of your income. And the most important thing, now knowing everything that we have been talking about, is that we tax the wealthy because it is moral and right and just. We do not tax the wealthy because we need their money. We don't need their money. We just need to create a country that is moral and right and just. And this level of income inequality is not moral, it's not right, and it's not just. And taxes allow us to make it that way. And we as a society decide how we define it, of what level is moral and what that threshold is. But we do not tax the wealthy because we need their money. Okay, next section, taking a drink. I hope this is all right. Thanks for being patient. I'm sorry. I'm just choosing not to look at the feedback. It is completely overwhelming, and I cannot answer questions right now. I've got to do this as a presentation. Okay, next section. And let's see. We're 2/3 through. Mechanics. How is money created, and how do we pay taxes? Not why, not any of the stuff we've spoken about, just how does it logistically happen that money is created and taxes are paid, federal taxes. So money, how is it created? And we spoke about this at high speed going backwards. So I'm just going to go a little slower in the right direction. So creating high-powered money, which is the federal government, there's other kinds which I'm not going into. High-powered money is created by the federal government by Congress writing a number into a law. So the Pony for All Act of 2018, they write the number 10 billion. And that's how money is created, because they wrote the number 10 billion on a piece of paper. That bill is signed into law. President Trump signed the Pony for All Act of 2018. Thank goodness he stood by his commitment. And now that money is created when it's passed into law. That law triggers the Treasury. That the Treasury triggers the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve creates a new line in a spreadsheet, actually a spreadsheet. A new line, it says Pony for All Act, 10 billion. And then underneath that are a bunch of breaking it down. So for example, in California, $300 million might go to a breeding company. And so that $300 million portion goes to the California State Reserve, Federal Reserve, goes to the California State Reserve, goes to the Wells Fargo bank that breeding company has an account in, and that account now has $300 million more in it, and that company is now legally obligated to do whatever it takes to help implement this law. That's how money is created, because you write a number into a bill and you pass it into law. Then the Treasury, then the Federal Reserve, then the state reserves, then the banks and the companies and people that are necessary to implement that law. That's how money is created. So paying your taxes. Paying your taxes. $1,000. You have to pay $1,000 in taxes. If you pay it in cash, you mail in paper dollar bills, it is not a joke. It's shredded. They shred it and they sell it. They sell shredded money as souvenirs. Most of us pay our taxes electronically. So, roughly speaking, this is not exactly correct, but it is pretty close to correct, that when you pay your taxes electronically, that you are authorizing, I need to learn the details of this, but this is close. When you pay your taxes electronically, $1,000, you are authorizing the federal government, so they receive your tax return, they see $1,000, that's how much they owed, and you are authorizing the federal government to reach into your bank account at your local bank and lower your balance. Lower your balance by $1,000. Federal government doesn't take that money. The federal government doesn't increase something by $1,000 on their side. They don't do anything. The only thing that they do is they store your tax return in a file cabinet, so they have notated that you have paid $1,000, but they're not using that in any way. It's just sitting in a file cabinet. But they have gone into your bank account and lowered your balance by $1,000. That's it. Okay, so that's mechanics. That's all for mechanics. Next subject. The federal debt. How can a monopoly currency issuer ever go into debt? What does that even mean? If I'm the only one in the world that is allowed to create the dollar, I can create it as much as I want, whenever I want, for whatever purpose I want. What in the world does it mean to be in debt in my own currency? It makes no sense. We can draw a $21 trillion bill on a piece of construction paper tomorrow. No more debt. The debt is meant to be scary. That's the only reason the debt exists, I believe. I have lots to learn, but best I know. The debt is meant to be scary. That's why it exists. The debt, technically speaking, all it is the entire sum of every currency users, so all of ours, all of our bank accounts, investments, and pocket change. Add all that stuff together, and that is the national debt. That's it. What does it mean that we have to pay that back? It's our money. It's my bank account, my investments, my pocket change, the money in my wallet. What does it mean that the United States has to pay that back, that it owes it somehow? Owes it to who? I saw some article recently that said that there was $200 trillion in debt for the entire world, and then I saw some tweet that said, who do we owe this debt to? The Decepticons? So that scary looking clock in Times Square, all that says, it says, oh, every person in the United States, man, woman, and child, now owes $68,000 to the national debt. And what that is saying is that the average amount of worth of every single American with their investments in their bank account and their pocket change and what's in their wallet is about $68,000. Who do we owe it to? Okay, so that's the debt. That's it for the debt. Okay, so now on, next thing. Deficit, surplus, and balanced budget. All of these things that we hear about the deficit, a balanced budget, and a surplus is all opposite world. You need to completely, whatever you hear about the deficit, surplus, and balanced budget, just whatever you hear, it's opposite. A balanced budget is responsible. A deficit is irresponsible. We're told it's irresponsible. We're told a surplus is responsible. A balanced budget amendment would be permanent and devastating austerity. I'm telling you this. This is true. A balanced budget amendment would be permanent and devastating austerity. And why is this the case? What is a balanced budget, just technically speaking? So I have a budget and I say that I'm going to spend $100 this week. And at the end of the week, I kept exactly within my budget. I spent exactly $100. I was perfectly responsible. I did exactly what I planned on doing. I was responsible from the federal government's point of view. The federal government, spent $100 into the economy, which means by definition, only for the federal government, when you write that $10 billion into a bill, that by definition means you spend it into the economy, which also means that you create $10 billion. For everybody else, that's not true. So if I spend, for the federal government, I spend $100, then for a balanced budget, I tax back $100. So why even give them that money to begin with? Why even give them the money? And this is not how it works. Taxes are done on a macroeconomic scale, on a grand scale. But just to narrow it down for the sake of this, if I spend $10 billion for the Pony for All Act, and then next April I tax back $10 billion, the people who implemented that law get nothing. They're nothing. What was the point of even giving them that money? We might as well have said, you are going to do this, period, and we're not going to give you anything for it. And would people do it? Would people implement that law? Of course not. They would rebel. I'm not doing $300 million of work for you and just have to give you back $300 million in a few months. That's insane. That makes no sense. That's what brutal dictatorships do. They just point a gun at your head and you say, you will do this or you will die. And it's pretty close to saying, oh, I'll give you $100, but I'm just going to take it back in a few months. But you do $100 of work for me, okay? I don't think so. So a balanced budget amendment means that the government does nothing for the people, gives them no incentive to do the things that need to be done. They give them nothing, but they make them do everything. And over time, forget over time. The only way to pay taxes is, let me start that again. When you spend 100 into the economy and you tax 100 back, then you make nothing. You cannot spend anything unless you dip into your own savings and your own investments and your wallet. You cannot save anything new. You can't spend unless you dip into your existing value, your existing wealth. So that is why a balanced budget is horrible. It does nothing for the people, gives people no value, and the only way that they can spend is to dip into their existing wealth. Okay. Surplus. Technically, what is a surplus? A surplus is I plan on spending $100 this week, just me as an individual, and at the end of the week, I can't believe it, I only needed to spend 80. I still have 20 left over. I have a surplus remaining, and that is responsible on my part. But for the federal government spends $100 into the economy, and then they tax back 120. So now, not only do the people get nothing for implementing that law, for doing what the country needs to have done, but now they still can't spend unless they dig into their own savings. They can't even pay taxes
unless they dig into their own savings, because they're given $100 and now they have to give more than that back. So they have to give it all back and dig into their savings to pay their taxes. So it is responsible to gouge the people. It's responsible to put a gun to the people's head and say, do something for me, I'm going to give you nothing in return. These are what we're told is responsible. A balanced budget is responsible. A surplus is responsible. Now let's go to the deficit. We're told a deficit is irresponsible. So what is a deficit? I plan on spending as an individual $100 this week, and at the end of the week, oh my goodness, I just couldn't make my budget. I had to spend $150. So I went over budget by $50. That is irresponsible of me. From the federal government's point of view, they spend $100 into the economy and they tax back $50. So now, how much is left in the people's pockets? $50. So now they don't have to dip into their savings. Now they have $50 more that they can put into their savings, or they can spend, or they can invest, or they can just have in their wallet. So a deficit, that we're told is irresponsible, is actually what the people require to survive. So no, we should not be doing a deficit in every possible situation. There are reasons to not do a deficit if people have so much money that it's putting on such incredible demand and pressure on an industry that doesn't have the real resources or the productive capacity to handle it. But in many situations, we absolutely should be having a deficit. The federal government should, because that is how you give money to the people. That is how people can save and invest and spend. Okay. One example of the balanced budget is the PROMESA board in Puerto Rico. Promesa. PR is for Puerto Rico. They took over the government. Colonialism. And the PROMESA board is in control of the people. The government's not. And the PROMESA board said to the government that the only way that we can give you control back, one of the big conditions, is that you must be responsible and you must have 4 years of balanced budgets. So not only are we screwing the people now with everything that's been going on, but if you want control of your people back, then you must screw the people even more for 4 years straight, and then we'll give you your government back. Okay. So, a couple more subjects. Take a drink. Thank you guys for being patient. I'm not seeing any of this feedback. I hope the world is still doing okay. I will talk for as long as you want when we're done. This has obviously gone pretty long, but it'll get better over time. All right, Social Security. Taxing the rich. Okay, Social Security. Bernie Sanders, one of the proposals during his campaign, and I wonder what he would say about it now, is that he wants to remove the cap on FICA, and FICA pays for Social Security. In 1935, the FDR created the Social Security Act, and part of this act was a FICA tax, a payroll tax, and that money paid into Social Security, which we now understand, after everything we've spoken about, is not true because no federal program requires any taxes at all. No income at all. So, but still, FDR created this FICA tax because there's a quote from him, which I need to find for next time, where he says, I created this tax not because it's needed, but because I want people to feel invested and so that politicians will not be able to take it away from them in the future. I'm gonna get rid of this reflection on my iPad here. Is that? Oh yeah, iPad. Okay. So I have all my like slides and stuff on an iPad below here, and the reflection is not good. Okay, so this FICA tax was created to make people feel invested so that years later, according to FDR, that people would not allow it to be taken away from them. So these FICA taxes are stored in a trust fund. It's called a trust fund. And I should say the FICA tax, currently, I don't know what it used to be, but the FICA tax is only for income up to $200,000 approximately. So a certain percentage of your income up to $200,000 is paid in FICA taxes. So every American has to do that up to $200,000. If you're a billionaire, though, everything above $200,000 is not taxed a dime. So Bernie Sanders says we must lift that tax. We must lift that cap. So everybody pays the same into Social Security. But this trust fund that FICA goes into is no different than that filing cabinet filled with taxes. Yes, it is notated how much taxes you have paid, but that is not used for anything. Just like taxes, it is notated how much taxes you have paid, but the money is not used for anything by the federal government. And the same thing with Social Security. The FICA goes into this trust fund. The trust fund is documents in a filing cabinet that notes how much you paid, but is never used for anything. But the trust fund is the only thing that you hear when the media says or politicians say that Social Security is running out of money. The trust fund is running out of money. Social Security is going broke. People are trying to steal from the Social Security trust fund. The trust fund doesn't mean anything except a filing cabinet of paper that is not, and that the information in there is not used for anything if you are a good faith actor. It is used for scaremongering, and that's it. So when they say that the trust fund is going to run out of money, it is meaningless and makes no economic sense, because Social Security is not a bucket of money, does not have a bucket of money associated to it. The Social Security Administration is an accounting agency that all they do is determine how much each person should get in benefits. And then they send that number to the Treasury, and then the Treasury creates the currency every year for each beneficiary. There is no bucket of money. Social Security cannot go broke because there's no money. There's no bucket of money to empty. You cannot steal from Social Security because there is no money to steal. The FICA cap should indeed be eliminated, but not because we need the money. The FICA cap should be eliminated because the FICA tax is a regressive tax that only the powerless have to pay. I mean, yeah, billionaires have to pay it, but it's only on the first $200,000 of their income. It's nothing. It's a piece of lint to them. But what really should happen, so yes, that cap should be eliminated because it is moral and right and just, but not because we need the money. What really should happen is that no one should ever have to pay the FICA tax again. That's what really should happen. Now, I have to be careful how I'm wording that because we need to keep the FICA tax as a possible tool in the future, but I think that's better of how I say that, which is no one should have to pay the FICA tax because it is useless. It's useless. Except for economic scaremongering. Let me see if I'm getting anything else in here. So, privatize and profit. The masters of the universe want to privatize Social Security because they want to profit off of it, because currently it's being given away for free. And they don't like that. They would rather be able to make some money off of it. So they want Social Security to go away. And they want to replace it with private industry. Some private version. And just like Social Security and I think it's called the NHS in England, and just like every safety net program, and even the government as a whole, even the entire United States government, what the masters of the universe are trying to do is to privatize, push the free stuff out of the way, and replace it with their own private version where they can profit off of us. And they do that by, number one, defunding. They strangle the money supply, especially with the NHS, the healthcare system in England. They do not give it enough money. They do not create enough money, not because they don't have it, just because they want to screw the system. So they defund it, even though they could easily create that money. They defund it. They don't give it enough. They sabotage it. And then a couple of years later, they look back and they say, oh, it failed. We got to privatize it. Oh, coincidentally, we get to profit off of it. But we got to privatize it because it failed. They defund it, they sabotage it, and then a couple years later, a few years later, they look back and they say, oh, it failed, got to privatize it. Coincidentally, I get to profit. And that's what's happening with Social Security, this trust fund, this stealing from. The Governmental Accounting Office, okay? The Governmental Accounting Office, they put out a report after every big bill proposal on how that bill would affect the economy. And this is a respected and nonpartisan group. And every GAO report is filled with economic scaremongering. They use terms like the debt and the deficit, and the Social Security benefits are going to run out by 3032, and now they're going to run out 3 years earlier, 3029 or whatever. But they do this not because the GAO is sinister, not because the GAO is filled with sinister people. They do this because in 1985, during the Reagan administration, a law was passed that required the GAO to use these scare terms, to use the terms deficit and debt, and to figure out Social Security in a way that determined when the trust fund, this meaningless trust fund, would run out. And this is a tool to sabotage the system so that a few years later we can point back and say Social Security has failed. We need to do it with our private option is going to be better. Coincidentally, we get to profit off of it. But our private option is better because the public option has failed. So Social Security can't run out because there's nothing to run out of. The benefits are created, the currency to pay out the benefits are created each year. The only way that Social Security can be destroyed is if politicians tell the Social Security Administration that you will pay less benefits, and they write a law to make that true. So the Social Security Administration will pay less benefits, will tell the Treasury to pay less benefits because the law tells them to. And that law is only a decision of our politicians. There is no economic reason for doing it. So, final subject. You guys are patient. Thank you. Okay, final subject. 2 separate fights. 2 separate fights. Gotta figure out this reflection thing here. Can I do it like this? I don't know. 2 separate fights. We must fight against society's injustices, endless war, excessive military, immoral levels of income inequality, We must fight against them. We must fight against them because they are immoral, unjust, and wrong. Not because they are too expensive. That's one. Number two, we must fight for the programs that the powerless need to survive. Medicare for all, a living wage, free college, fix our poisoned water. We must fight for these things. We must fight for them because they are moral and right and just, not because they are affordable. And the most important thing that all of us must do, most progressives, most Americans, what we must do is we have to stop linking these fights together. We do not need money from the rich in order to pay for Medicare for all. We do not need to reduce the military in order to pay for federal job guarantee. We need to reduce the military because it is moral and just and right. We need the military. The military is important, but our excessive level of military is obscene, and we need to reduce it because it's obscene, not because we need that money to be instead used for Medicare for all. And it's these linking of these two fights that I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it's killing the progressive movement. When we link these two fights together, when we say that we must get money from the military before we can have Medicare for all, we must get money from the rich before we can have a federal job guarantee. That means that we must wrest the money from their cold, dead hands. That is class warfare, and that is a fight that it pits the powerless against the powerful, and that is a fight, and that is a fight that the powerless will always lose, every single time. And that's what they want. They want to pit us together. And just like in the beginning, where the father decided to get, the multi-millionaire father decided to get a present for child number one, twin number one, and decided not to get a present for twin number two, and pretended that these decisions were linked together, they were dependent on each other, when the truth is that he decided to get a present for twin number one and decided to not get a present for twin number two, even though he could easily give them both exactly what they wanted and what they needed, what they desperately need. It's like when we link these two fights together, the progressive movement and the progressive media, TYT, Jimmy Dore, Graham Elwood, Kyle Kulinski, all of these people, the whole progressive movement, we do everything right. We describe exactly what the problem is. We describe exactly what the solution should be, what it should look like, how we do it. But then when we go in for, that's like 95% of the fight, we fight perfectly. But then we go to Congress and we say, give us Medicare for all. And then they say, how are you going to pay for it? And then we go back to the drawing board and justify and analyze and figure out how we're going to pay for it. We go in for the kill, and the final step of actually going in for the kill and getting what we need, and we shoot ourselves in the foot. We stab ourselves instead of them, and we go back to the end of the line. That's what happens when we link these fights together. We do everything right except that final step that is required to actually get it. it's like we're pulling on a rope and stepping on it at the same time. We are getting nowhere. And, okay, so this is it. Understanding modern money means that our politicians can never again pretend that I really, really wish that I could give you these things. I know you need them. I can see how important it is. I can see how much it would relieve your suffering. But unfortunately, I can't, because of the debt, because of the deficit, because of money, because of being responsible. When the truth is that they are using that to hide the fact that they don't want to give us these things. They don't want to give these things to us because they are paid to not give these things to us. When you learn modern money, you realize what we should have done a long time ago. And that is to organize and to march on to Congress and to demand Medicare for all, demand a federal job guarantee, demand that they fix our poisoned water. And then, when they turn around and they say to us, oh, I would really love to do that for you. Oh, I know how much you want it. I know how much you need it, truly need it. But how are you gonna pay for it? And I am telling you that the only reasonable response to give is this. And that is to say, we are going to pay for this by getting you out of office and by replacing you with someone who will never ask that question again. And they are never going to ask that question again. And they are just going to get the job done. And then your one and only mission in life is to make that politician's life a living hell until they give it to you or they get out of office. And that's the end. Okay, so now, deluge of comments here. All right, so I don't know how to do this. I'm going to turn on my comments on my iPad. I can see them easier. Hold on. I hope I can see them all. I don't think I'm allowed to go all the way back up to the top after all this time, but we'll see. All right, so thank you guys for being so patient. I know that this needs to be fixed up and shortened and stuff, but I'm guessing that was about 1 hour and 20. I really want to get it down to 1 hour, and clearly I was stumbling in some stuff, but okay, let's see. Let me get to your comments, please. All right, yeah, I can only go up. I can't go up so much, unfortunately. Can I go see the older comments? Let me see. Progressives. All right. Let me see. Can I see these comments? Nope. All right. Unfortunately, I can only see so many comments. After this is done, I can see all of them. But unfortunately, I can't go up and see questions or whatever. So forgive me. But if you have something that you want to say or tips on, things that were not accurate or things that are, subtly, should be better. I mean, clearly this is going to get better. I'm going to be doing this every week. This was a scramble because I had so much to integrate. But I'm really looking to you to help me make this better. So if there's something that was wrong, you can tell me now or later. I really want to fix this up. I want to polish this up to the level of something that, really deserves to be, whatever, considered an MMT economic presentation. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Erin. All right. Thank you, guys. No, I'm very grateful for all this stuff. If there's any feedback, this is all wonderful to see this. I appreciate it. That was long. You guys were very patient, and I'm going to have a lot of comments to read when this is done. Thanks, Christian. That's very nice. So any feedback, anything, any comments, or aside from just it was good, or you can watch it all again, Carol. As soon as I finish, it's going to be, you can watch it. It should be ready just a few minutes later. Oh yeah, Jason, I would absolutely love to do that. I'd absolutely love to do that. That would be very interesting. And I'm glad you're still here after all this time. It seems like an almost impossible task to get Congress to change. That's what Lance says. If we continue to remain ignorant as we are, absolutely, we will never get Congress to change. But if we can teach the masses modern money, then we can finally cut through the bullshit and get things done and understand when they're distracting us, when they're throwing a time waster in our faces. It helps us cut through, and we stop wasting our time. There's a TYT video I just discovered yesterday. 125,000 views from November last year. The tax bill is going to increase the debt by this much, and it actually has a picture of the debt clock on the video, the main picture for the video. The whole video, 90% of that video, is just time wasting on economic scaremongering that means nothing. So if we can educate these leaders to get rid of this economic time wasting and scaremongering that they are doing without any sinister intent, it's just what they know. But if we can stop this, then we can stop wasting our time and use it for things that we should be doing, which is organizing, going on the Congress, and not accepting anything except for yes. Let's see. Slight critical. I tend to over-explain. I do not doubt that at all. I would reserve that for the technical stuff. The stories about the kid could be shortened. Yeah, actually, you should see the Graham one. That's way longer. But yes, I want to make everything as concise as possible. Thank you, Virginia. Yeah, no, I did the whole story twice with Graham. I repeated the entire story twice. I mean, my thinking was that I wanted to waste that time because that's what the government does to us, is make us waste their time, and I wanted to give a small sample of that. But I agree, that still needs to be sharpened. A lot of things need to be sharpened. Thank you, Virginia. Let's see. Yes, Lance, we have no hope if we remain ignorant like we are. There's no hope. More than 90% of progressives, true progressives, don't know this at all. Just know nothing about this. So everything we do from a position of ignorance. Like I said, we spend 95% of the fight fighting perfectly. But that doesn't matter if we mess it up, fatally mess it up, when we go to the halls of Congress and demand it. It doesn't matter how well we fight if we mess up the most critical spot, the most critical step. So we do that we are in an enormous haze of ignorance. And yes, if we remain ignorant, we will never get anything done. And I think that the progressive movement really won't be much of anything except for like a thorn in the side of the Democratic Party. We will never be a force to reckon with until we learn modern money, Chai says, please over-explain. Okay, so now I can do whatever I want because I'm pleasing somebody. No matter what I do, somebody will be pleased and somebody will be angry. Christian, you are welcome to private message me. I would love to hear what you have to say if you have notes on that. Obviously, I made a lot of changes this time. I scrambled to get them in, so it was a bit of a struggle. It was also a very different experience to give this without any feedback along the way. It was very hard to do this. It was great with Graham because he gave me feedback and I could just feed off of that. Here, I'm just totally going blind, and I'm making up, that feedback in a way. too long. Well, too long. The presentation was too long, Bill. Simbrello, it was too long. My goal is to get it down to an hour. My goal is to get it down to an hour. I don't see how it could be any shorter than that. There is no way to put MMT, Modern Money, on a postcard. There's no way. I am not interested in talking with people if they are not interested in sitting down and listening. Some people are. Some people might want to condense it to a postcard, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying to reach people who... there is nothing wrong with trying to reach people in bite-size whatever to try and get it down to that. I'm not interested in that. I don't think that that's a good way of going about it. A lot of people do, and that's fine. All of these different styles is only a good thing. But I really think that an hour is appropriate. At the moment, I think an hour is appropriate for a lecture. And so this was long. This was too long from that point of view. I want to get it down to an hour. And for a one-on-one conversation, my goal was about an hour and a half. With Graham, it was about an hour and 40 minutes. It was my first time. Maybe it'll be shorter with them. But I want them to be able to interrupt and ask questions as much as they want. As far as too short, I'm pretty sure that that's just something that I personally am not going to choose. But there may be a lot of people that want to get it shorter, and there's nothing wrong with that. There should be a lot of teachers teaching it in all of their own different styles, and that can only be a good thing. But me personally, I want to talk to people who have the patience to sit down and listen, especially the leaders who have the eyes and ears of a lot of people, so that I can get a foot in the door with them and get trust with them because they trust the leader. So I mean, I'm curious of what should be cut. I don't see much that could be cut. I mean, a lot needs to be polished. But overall, I'm not seeing like what can dramatically be cut out of it. Good. So some people like it. I mean, style is just going to be the best I can do, but I encourage other people to teach it in their own styles. I hope that this is going to inspire other people to want to teach it. They can use some of what I have. They can do it in their own way or whatever it is. Thank you. Some people are saying that they like that it's long. I do want to sharpen it up. I obviously want to make it as sharp as possible, but that doesn't mean I want to cut out necessary explanation. So that's going to take time. I'm doing this every week as a lecture on Saturday night at 8 for the time being. I also want to separately schedule one-on-ones with people to do dual live streams or whatever, dual videos, to explain it to them in an hour and a half format. I want to do it, but at Saturday at 8, I'm planning on working towards an hour lecture, and as I get it sharper, I'm going to create slides and start using graphics to make this into a real presentation. Excuse me. Okay. It is, I agree, it's complex. It's not just that it's complex. It's not just that it's complex. It is complex because it conflicts with our miseducation. If we started teaching this in elementary school, this would not be considered complex. It would just be. But everybody has been miseducated for their entire lives. And so it is complex because you must take them from where they are in this incorrect spot, back them out of it, and then start teaching modern money. And there is just no way around making that a long time. I mean, there's no way around. It has to be a significant investment of time in order to do that. And my goal for this is that they leave this with the misconceptions mostly out of their head, and that their minds are open to modern money, that I haven't taught them any of the advanced stuff, but their head is spinning and they realize that there's something important that they need to go out and learn from people who know more than I do. Virginia, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but as far as talking to me privately, friend me. Just friend request me. My name is Jeff Epstein, and Cheerios, chocolate peanut butter Cheerios is my current picture, which should be Kermit the Frog, but there's a reason that I can't say, unfortunately, that it was Kermit the Frog for like 9 years, 10 years, and now I had to change it for a stupid reason. So it's a Jeff Epstein, and it's a chocolate Cheerios picture for the profile picture. And then you can private message me, and you'll tell me what you want. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know who's here that knows this stuff, and who actually didn't, like, I don't know who's here that I actually taught, and that who's just, who actually knows this already. I know there's some experts here. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you. There was definitely some rough spots. I had to implement so much. The twin analogy changed a lot. The business card analogy, I was scrambling with that just a few hours before we started. That was rough because Ellis Winningham educated me that Ellis Winningham ran through the whole thing with me, which was amazing, and my head is spinning, and I have not implemented all of it by far. But the big thing that I did implement was the incorrect. It really worked well, so it's a little upsetting, but it's not the truth, so it doesn't matter. But with Graham, the business card analogy with Graham started with bartering, that my kids bartered. And then I introduced allowance, and it was like, but this bartering system works great. Why should I have to have first of all, money, but second of all, your business card? But it started with bartering, and then the end of it was, instead of bartering, that the bartering was, there was an intermediary currency. So instead of bartering for this, they would barter for money, broke it in half. But that's not what the history is. We didn't start with bartering, which then the government took over. That's not how it happened. What happened is that the government immediately created their money for military support and creating buildings and whatever it was. So that drastically had to change, and I had to rewrite that, and that was just a few hours ago that was rewritten. So I think it was okay, but that definitely needs to be sharpened up. Let me see. Yeah, and the meme in the event, Kim Niles is here. I saw her comment. She created the image for the event, and she created the meme, which uses the same dogs. It's really good stuff. So Kim Niles is here. She did that. You can use our memes. I'd like to see what memes you're talking about. Carrie? I don't know how to pronounce your name. Carrie? I would like to see the memes that you're talking about. You say you can use our memes to illustrate some key points. I'd like to see those. Yeah, I mean, I have a whole presentation. I mean, it's a document, and I just cut it into pages, put page breaks, and then I just PDF, and I'm just looking at the PDF the whole time, which is cool because it doesn't look obnoxious that I'm looking down at the PDF, but unfortunately you see the PDF, so I don't know what to do about that. But yes, so Jason, I'm curious if you are one of the people that did not know it. You say you're a banker. I think you said something to that effect. So I wonder, I had a friend before that said, I have a friend, an author, who said that the Federal Reserve is in fact the monopoly currency issuer, which turns everything on its head, because the Congress now needs to borrow from the Federal Reserve and needs to, is that the Congress, our Congress is not the center of our government. It's the Federal Reserve. And if that's true, so it's like, even if that's true, our law still says that it shouldn't be, and that we need to learn the rules even if it's not being followed. So even if the Federal Reserve is violating the Constitution, which if that's the case, then they indeed are. Federal Reserve Act is not an amendment, so the Constitution still trumps the act. So therefore, the Congress is the monopoly currency issuer according to our law. But if the Federal Reserve is in fact now being used as the currency issuer, that they're cheating, if they're violating the law, that doesn't change the fact that we should still understand the law. You must understand the rules of the game in order to properly deal with the people who are cheating. So even if the laws aren't being followed, we must understand what the laws actually are. You need to understand the rules, otherwise you can't deal with anybody trying to get around the rules. Hear and understand about cutting the lecture down to an hour. I don't want to make things any more difficult. That said, I'd like to suggest that you have a 2-part summation. Part 1, an explanation of the links. I think that's chat. I think it's cut off. Lisa, I mean, the comments should be available after this is done, but during the live stream, it cuts the comments when they're too long, so I can't see what the rest of what you're saying right now. I will look through when I'm done. There are 2 MMT videos with Jeff, and in fact, there's a 3rd podcast. I made them. Jeff, in February, we were talking on the phone. He lives near me, So we've recently become friends, and I spoke to him on the phone about some progressive issues and the congressional race that's here. And he said, you need to understand modern money. And I had no idea what it was, and I was like, I don't know. And he grabbed my hand, and we just jumped off a cliff together, and he spoke on the phone with me in private for just a couple hours, for an hour, or whatever it was. And my head was spinning at the end of it. And then soon after, Jeff and I did a live stream where he continued teaching me MMT, and it was really exciting because people who know it were cheering me on. They were watching my, light bulb moments, which is why Graham was so exciting. Graham Elwood was so exciting because there was like 5 times during the video where you just see his light bulbs going off, and it was just so exciting. So there's 2 real progressive live streams with me and Jeff. And I took the audio off of them and made a podcast out of them, which is on my website, citizensmedia.tv, and then click on podcast. And there's the audio of those live streams of him teaching me. And then there's another conversation where we were just at a diner and whatever talking about it. So there's stuff out there. There already is with me and Jeff. And yeah, I will never, I would love to do more. Okay, let's see. There's memes in the Slack, in the progressive Slack. I did not know that. I will look. 2 takeaways. John, we have enough money for education, work, retraining, daycare services, and healthcare. Either make this happen, or we will canvass your district and create a coalition of voters so you will not be reelected. I guess you go on, but it's cut off. But yeah, exactly. If they try and say, how are you going to... this is only the federal level. This is only applicable to the federal level. When they say, how are you going to pay for it? You say, by getting you out of office and replacing you with someone who will never ask that question again. And until that day happens, we will make your life a living hell until you give it to us or get out of office. That's the only answer to how you're going to pay for it. That's it. That's it. Even if you say, I'm not going to answer that, that's too much. You don't spend a second on that. We spend more than half of our time as the progressive movement and the media on how you're going to pay for it, and the debt and the deficit, and we should reduce the military. How many schools could that pay for? Yeah, so the errors in the Graham video. One was the bartering before. I only need this because of the iPad. I don't normally wear it. It's only for reading, but I have to read the iPad while I'm doing this. Screw it. I'm so used to it now. So the errors was the business card starting with bartering. That was wrong. Another error was that I talked about how if you try and implement ponies in only 1 week, That would cause hyperinflation. That's wrong, because inflation affects all industries, all products, not just one industry. It would cause prices to go up if you try and implement it in a week. It would cause a black market, and that might be the beginning of what could become inflation. But inflation affects everything. Inflation is macroeconomic. It is not a single industry or even, the related industries. If prices of ponies go up and therefore the prices of the related industries goes up, that is not the whole economy. That is not inflation. So Ellis suggested, and which I did tonight, which is do not bring up the concept of inflation or prices going up, which I just barely touched on, because it's not inflation. So I moved that to the controlling inflation section. There was some other stuff as well. I don't recall at the moment, but I know there were a few things. Yeah, dual entry spreadsheet accounting basics. I mean, that's what's it called? Sectoral balance, I think you're talking about. I just need to learn it. I don't see how it fits in. I don't see what part that would be important for. I'm not against it. I just don't understand it well enough and how it fits into this whole context. Keith. Yes. Oh, I'm already way up again. I didn't. Okay. We've been going for a while. Thank you, everyone. If there's anything else, you have to say, I would love your feedback. I want this to improve. I mean, style and length. That's more just a decision. I want to make it as good as possible, but it needs to be what works for me as a presenter. But as far as accuracy and subtle things that should be different as far as economic accuracy, I really, really want to improve that, and I need assistance because I'm just not experienced. I've been at this for 4 or 5, February, March, April, May, June, just over 5 months. So I really am looking forward to feedback on making this better. I'm doing this every week. Saturday at 8 is the plan at the moment. I'm doing the same exact presentation every week. Now I have a week to make this better, and to sharpen it up as best as I can and try and time myself to an hour. Hopefully in a month or so, this is going to be sharp. So I hope that I might get to present this at the New York conference in September. I hope. That would be awesome. That would be an understatement. But regardless, this would be very valuable no matter what. This is going to be valuable no matter what happens. With this education initiative that I mentioned at the beginning, this clearly is going to be a part of that. This is going to educate people no matter what happens. So, all right, thank you very much. I'm sure that there are a lot of compliments that I have missed, and I'm very grateful for all of them. I look forward to your feedback. And I hope that you'll join me next week and see a better, slicker, less stammering version. Good night, everybody. Thank you.